Hey, welcome to the Distro Boss Podcast. Sav here. I'm on with Aneury and Evangelista. He's the partner and owner of a company called RXP team in the real estate space based in New York. They actually focus on New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. I'm always really interested in speaking with people in the real estate world because real estate is constantly changing. On one side of the coin, you think real estate is the gold standard. It's something that's always going to be there and the business model must be the same. And actually, it's not. It's always changing. And so I'd love to have these conversations. And Yuri, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your time here.
Oh, I have to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Cool, man. So, let's start off with like what your business is specifically within real estate, because sometimes it can get confusing with realtors, brokers, associate brokers, real estate agents, and where do you sit in that sort of framework?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a real estate broker, a licensed real estate broker here in the tri-state area. But I don't house my license under my own company. I actually house my license under a parent company called Real Broker that's across all 50 states in Canada. And the reason why I do that is because I get to practice my business as an independent broker, but leverage the network of a larger firm. So think of it this way. If I were to go out and start my own brokerage from scratch, I would have to build the banking systems, do all the compliance stuff that's needed with running a brokerage, get all the legal out of the way before I can hit the ground running and start helping people. But by holding my license under an established brokerage already, I can simply borrow their name, put my branding on it, open an office, and within a week or two, I'm good to go.
So they're just like providing the back office administration side of it. Do you get access to like partnerships and clients and stuff like that, or is that part's off limits or something? How does that work?
No, and that's exactly it, right? They provide all the backend support that I need as a brokerage to run, but I get to tap into what they've built and the network that this brokerage has across the U.S. We were at a conference actually just this week. I just got back last night from it, where I met just a few hundred other people in the same sort of setup as me, and we've made deals together already just by being together, being part of the same brokerage. Again, we're all housing the same name. We can all collaborate, and we can just tap into each other's networks that way.
Oh, awesome, man. So this is like the broker network. So does that mean so how does that affect your business model? Is it like when I visualize the broker business in the US, and I've got to make that distinction because some of the people listening to me are based in the UK, and it's very different. Like the real estate in the US, or property in the US, is first of all way more lucrative than it is in the UK. I mean, from an investor standpoint, you might say London property is great, and there's a lot more in the UK. But from an agency standpoint, in terms of if you're like literally just there to sell property, you're looking at around like a percent, 1% commission or 1.5%. I think the range is like from 0.75% to 3% in the UK. And 3%, you've got to be like, you must have the exclusivity on like some kind of royal building or something. Like the average is 1.5. So that's not very enticing for someone like me who's like, I want to make money selling property. I'm more interested in working in the US where I can get like 6% and stuff like that. Even north of 6%. So it's like, when you're as a broker, that's kind of like, in my view, like if there's a two-tiered system, it's tier one, and then the agents are tier two. And like my natural sort of mode of thought would be, okay, for me to build a business in that world, I've just got to get my license as a brokerage firm and then get as many real estate agents as possible, kind of give them as much infrastructure as I can, and push out there. It seems like what you've done is there's like another mystery level up there. You've kind of partnered with other brokerages or another like umbrella broker. So how does that play out with your own strategy?
Yeah. So just taking a step into my model and how a traditional brokerage works, you typically have a broker, and that broker has an office, and they hire workers or their agents. The agents are the ones that, for the most part, go out there, do the legwork, are the ones showing homes, meeting people, just taking care of the day-to-day. and you as a broker are overseeing those agents, making sure they're following the rules, following the law, not getting into trouble, because they represent you as a broker. They are your boots on the ground, if you will, for any transaction, but it's still your name out there. Whenever an agent of mine goes out to meet a client, they represent my company, my team. And so I need to be there to provide their back-end support and really answer to the needs of the clients, whatever it may be. But I, as an individual, cannot be everywhere at the same time. So they go out on my behalf. So that's the traditional broker agents approach. What we've done is we've partnered with Rio as a upper layer behind us. And like I said, what that does for us is that my broker agent relationship does not change, but I have an extra layer of support that can help me in times of needs when it comes to either auto-save referrals or back-end systems that perhaps I cannot yet afford because my scale is not large enough to be able to get some of these great discounts that say real broker, my brokerage gets on the back end for our CRM systems or for our support staff in the back. So that higher level brokerage, they'll take a fee from us from transaction, and I take a fee for transaction for my agents. So a typical brokerage will have somewhere between a 40-60 split between a broker and their agents. And then Rio will have a 15% split for that transaction. But to your point, when you have such large margins or such large potential in a transaction with a 6% commission, a $1 million plus home, it works. There's enough there that you can able to still be lucrative and still provide a great service to your client because you are collecting enough of a fee to pay whoever you need to pay.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And that comes across. And when I moved to the US, I was living there for 8 years. I felt that came across in the service I used to get just from the agents that I used to work with. They got paid more. Like, you work with like UK agents half the time. They're just, all they're trying to do is just sell quick, get in and out the deal as fast as possible. And it's like, it's just this like meat grinding sales type of company. That you'll normally come across in the UK. It's not like this more service-driven organization that you'll find in the US. And I've always liked going to the US to work in real estate. And I worked in real estate quite a lot. A lot of the things, because I was never a licensed real estate agent in the US. My whole bag was I just need to buy buildings and then sell them up, mark them up and sell them for more. So you do the bare minimum on a building. I mean, my philosophy was this, like, if the golden, and you could you'll probably agree with this or not, and you tell me. Don't just be a yes man. You tell me if I'm not. like so, where it was like real estate as a sort of the gold standard rules is that over time real estate will generally go up in value. I mean, if you look at just real estate as a whole, you go back, maybe there was a dip last year or something, but if you go back and you look at like 20 years, real estate goes up. And provided, of course, the real estate that you purchase is making at least $1. At least £1 in profit. So profit after all the expenses that property requires. As long as it's making £1, it will pay down any debt over time. Now, it might be a long time, but it can pay down that debt provided, of course, it's making at least $1 in profit. So if those are the two golden rules of real estate, it's like, well, how then can I get involved? Because all you've got to do now is kind of like increase the margins. How much more can I make on a direct sale? So I used to get involved with that. And in the US, I mean, you get some really, one thing I loved about the US is there's so many places to get involved with real estate. In England, it's like you get involved in like the main city, London. As soon as you start leaving London, everything kind of gets worse. Like then you have like pockets here and there, big cities. But in the US, every single state had a downtown area. And they had like a rich side and they had a poorer side. And then you could access vast amounts of property for great discounts in many cases. And plus there's also everything else involved, like the whole wholesale market and all that kind of stuff. How much of all that are you involved in?
Yeah, so we actually dabble in all of that. And that's because there is so much that you can do in the US when it comes to real estate. We started our careers by first investing and buying a set of rental properties ourselves. And this was back in 2018, and we said, "Hey, we like this. How do we do more of this?" So we bought a set of 8 units in 2018 for very cheap. It was upstate New York. It was almost free property, so it made sense to do so. And we came back and said, okay, let's set up a business model where we can gather funds, build capital, buy more, bring on partners to buy bigger, and eventually scale that to what we have today, which is about 60 units across the tri-state area. So we've done everything from not just buying and selling real estate for, say, our clients, but we've also partnered with our clients to buy multifamily buildings, to buy some commercial properties. We property manage for them, again, for a fee. And we do fix and flips where we'll buy distressed properties, fix them up, and sell them for a profit.
Yeah. Do you kind of like work in the contract? Like you get a percentage off the upside on a sale. So you buy something for 10 million, you're taking, perhaps there's a percentage point on how much you'll take in on a monthly basis to cover management costs of that building. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes time to sell, whether it's a couple of years from now or 5-10 years from now, maybe longer, and you sell at, like, let's say you're making 4 million on the property, would you say that you'd get like 20 or 30 or something percent off that upside? So, do you have that kind of model working with you?
Exactly. So as a broker, we'll go ahead and we'll benefit from the purchase and the sale just from our service alone. And that'll be, as you mentioned before, anywhere from 3 to 6% of the sales price. From there, as we manage either the property long-term as a rental or in the short-term as a flip, we are taking a percentage of that, the monthly income, just to cover expenses. And that can range, depending on the company, between 6 to 10% of monthly revenues. As we maintain the building, as we do fixes, we also get a portion of the actual construction costs in terms of property management, construction management. So again, another piece of revenue there. And once we sell, we do hold, depending on the property and how it was purchased, an equity position in that asset. And once we sell, we get our commission paid out, but we also get whatever portion of that equity belongs to us. So there's about 5 different ways there that throughout this journey of having bought the property, held it, fixed it, and then sold it, that we're making money throughout.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of model I wanted to get involved, but I never did. Yeah. I ended up, so because I didn't have the real estate license when I just got to the US, my whole business, and this kind of stems from my experience in the UK, where because they were only paying like 1% max on a sale, for us to actually make money, it was to basically go out with a tin cup, find as many people as you could to invest into an asset that you've chosen. You'd buy the asset, and then your job was to then sell it again, but at a markup. So we'd do what we, even if it just meant painting the doors a different color, or just because we felt that we could sell it better than the people currently were trying to sell it, we could just promote it better and therefore sell it for a higher price point. That difference that we could get, we'd have that split. We'd say it's like 70-30. Like we'd get 30, you guys get 70. We're buying this, we're going to basically flip it essentially. And in the UK, you got we tended to wait like around 6 months there's a couple of reasons around like stamp duty and taxes, but like you'd buy a property, hold it for 6 and then flip it. And you just try and build up this pipeline. It was very successful. But so when I got to the US, that was how I thought. So that's the only way I could get involved with real estate. So it was to, again, go out with the tin cup, find as many investors as I could to pick up a large building that had multiple tenants in there. So the rent roll was big enough. And then it was literally just about, okay, holding it for a period, doing what we can in that time to address some of the rental issues. How can we increase rents if we can? What can we do with the sort of beautification of the property? And then it was like, okay, let's flip it, let's sell it again for a higher price point. And then that's how I'd make the money. And then the partnerships with the brokers that I was getting involved with, and I was like, it was almost like everyone had a slice of the cake. You've got like the buy side, they're earning, they want to be there for the sell side too, so they're double dipping. And it's like, then you've just got, I'm like, I need to get this agency license and I need to get the broker license, because there's like potentially like 12 extra % here that I'm just saying goodbye to, which I could very much be part of. So it's just such a lucrative business to be in, especially in like the New York area.
Oh, definitely. I think our average price points here, depending on the type of commodity that they're buying, say it's residential, it's $1 million easy. So even if you're just doing the buy or sell side and you're getting 6% of $1 million, and do that multiple times over and over again, you'll be just fine. And then when you add onto this, the property management, add onto it the fix and flips, it just grows from there.
Yeah, it does, man. One thing I did notice recently, and I say recently, over the last 3 years, something happened. It made me have to sell. I had a couple of like, buildings in Harlem where they had like around 12 apartments in them, well, 8 to 12, but they were pre-war buildings. They were older, but it was okay to buy those in the past for me, at least was fun. And this is my own sort of assumptions here, based on one article I read in The Economist, and I'll explain what it said. It was literally, so I had these pre-war buildings. Pre-war means old as F buildings, right? They look old, but they have character, right? So people still like to rent them, right? A lot of them have walk-ups. Mine had elevators in them in Harlem, which was the thing. That's a nice to have in Harlem. Harlem, by the way, is gentrified for anyone who doesn't know New York. Like Harlem's a pretty cool place to be, even though there are some pockets, but it's still a good place to get real estate, especially when it's in Manhattan. It's close to train links. So it was, for me, a sensible place to go and invest my own money to buy buildings. Trouble was always, you're always going to have issues with like rent roll weight, but that's why you buy multifamily. If you've got 10 people in an apartment building complex, and um, if two have problems paying their rent, the rest are covering it. So you're still able to be a net positive on the property. So there are those issues, but that's standard with every property. But something changed, and this article scared the daylights out of me. And it was basically all these permit changes in New York City, where they were after COVID's like catastrophic effect on real estate in Manhattan, and how everyone had left the city and they were just trying to get people back in. How they've basically offered, and this has never happened before in New York. Probably in many other places, but definitely not in New York, because it's so draconian with the way property sold there in terms of their permitting and systems. They suddenly allowed established commercial property to convert some of their space. I think it is up to 50%. Correct me if I'm, I don't know, but a lot of space into residential. Now, residential is a big kind of refurb, especially in a commercial building where, if you picture in your mind's eye a big building that's offices, you've got plumbing system that goes down like one side for like lavatories, toilets, bathroom areas. To suddenly have to convert that entire floor, for instance, to residential, you now have to get plumbing all over the place for the kitchen sinks and toilets, and yeah. So but they allowed for it, and there was this mass of like investment coming in to actually make these conversions, and so that meant that some of the best addresses in Manhattan were about to become available, like around Central Park, Midtown, where there wasn't there was residential there, of course, but now you're having access to these like commercial businesses, buildings that have these amazing entrances that were catering to like the elite businesses that would enter and reside in New York, and now going to be able to everybody who can afford the rent there. And of course, they had all these incentives for people to come in. And so I was like, oh, and I've got these pre-war buildings. I've got to get rid of those, because no one's going to want to live in those when they've got like these co-working spaces, rooftop gardens, amazing address location. I mean, can you speak on this? Are you seeing a lot of this where you are? Are people trying to offload as fast as they possibly can? What's going on there?
No, and I think the thing to keep in mind is that there is a shortage of housing, especially in Manhattan. There's way more people that are looking for homes that are in a way affordable, that are having to share, small. You've seen New York City. You've seen those small 100-foot apartments that you can really fit yourself
The
into.
shoebox, the shoebox apartment. Yeah.
There's such a big demand for this that yes, there are investors coming in and converting these spaces. But they're not converting enough of them to make a huge impact on what we currently have. These pre-war buildings that you mentioned, especially in Harlem, people love those buildings because of the character of the location.
I know, they sell really quick. As soon as I'm all panicking, I'm a very motivated seller, and I sell the thing, and then before you know, I've got 3 cash offers for the place, not even worrying having to worry about mortgages. So as much as I was scared and concerned, they did sell real fast. So
yeah, it's a hot commodity. Yeah. It's definitely there, and it's growing more so today. There are a lot of new rules and regulations that have come, especially after COVID, and I did think that those would impact us in a negative way. But what I've seen is that it's open opportunities for those that are willing to take that risk, or willing to dive into this unknown space. because there have been a lot of people like yourself that offloaded their portfolios, scared of what's to come. I personally bought properties in that time, and my investments have skyrocketed from there. Just because, again, it's New York City at the end of the day, and people want to live here. They want to move into Manhattan, especially. They want to move into towns, neighborhoods like Harlem. Even if you have an old asset, use that opportunity to elevate that asset and keep some of those characteristics, which is what we've done, and attract people that perhaps cannot afford the new luxury, skyrise that's coming up by Central Park, but they can still afford a nice apartment in Harlem that's close enough.
Yeah. What about like the other things that I used to look into when I was there was so big time in the commercial real estate space. And when I say commercial, it's important for me to make the distinction that like multifamily is in like in British terms is like a block of flats, right? The apartment complex, right? That is considered a multifamily in the US, and that is considered commercial property. I think is it as soon as you go over 5 apartments, is that right?
Yep.
As soon as you four or 5, right? Is it? I forget the exact number.
It's 5 and up.
Yeah, and as you go as soon as you're up that, now it's considered as far as your accountant's concerned. It's a commercial property. And so when I say commercial in this sense, what I'm referring to are like the triple net real estate. So the triple net deals that you can see going on. I mean, there were so many different things. I actually got involved with that 1031 exchange sale with triple net properties, where people would just basically swap out to achieve a 1031 exchange. But there were once I started going down that rabbit hole, I started to see so many opportunities with like the non-traditional real estate endeavor, which would be the commercial space. Like, yes, you've got the triple nets on the retail space or the restaurant space, and then you've also got like the things that I actually got heavily involved with, which was the parking lot business, because parking was great. Because I mean, there was always like these salient points with parking. It's like you've got, unlike traditional real estate, like renting single family, multifamily, even most commercial space, if it's office space and that sort of thing, you can only ever raise the rents by a couple of percentage points per year without risking losing your tenants completely. And of course, there are actually legal limits too. Like I think it's like 1 or 2%. I think there was a legal limit at one point, if it isn't already, or if it isn't still there already. But you've also got, when it comes to parking lots, like for instance, you could raise, if the price of milk went up tomorrow, you could change your parking prices. It could go from like $25 today special to $75 per hour tomorrow, and no one would bat an eyelid as to the reasons, your justification for selling it, other than you have a monopoly in that area for parking, or it's a highly trafficked area. So I like that about the real estate world. As far as the commercial side is, like, how far down are you going in that world? Like, are you working with triple nets? Are you working with 1031s? Are you looking at things like warehouse space, commercial parking lot space, like hangars, aircraft hangars, anything like that? Like,
yeah, so I think we definitely are, and it's funny that you mentioned, we're looking at a parking lot deal ourselves. We got a call just yesterday from a past client that mentioned a developer approached them and they want to sell all their parking lots in the city. So really excited for that.
Trying to sell all of their parking lots?
All their parking lots in the city. So we're having a meeting later this week to figure that out. So I'm going to be giving you a call.
Parking lots in New York City are a very, very, very big deal. Like, yes. Very big deal, because you can command extremely high prices for Manhattan. It is crazy. You charge $125 an hour for an oversized exotic.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But so we've dabbled in this space on 2 fronts. We did have our own parking lot at some point, and like you said, when we first got into that business, the rents for the spaces were crazy low. They were about $50 a day. And we've just doubled that overnight. And we were the only parking lot in that area. So there was no pushback at all from the current column tenants that were renting those spaces because it was already underpriced. So just by us going in there and increasing the rents to what they should be, we did nothing, and our revenues increased dramatically. In terms of the other approaches, we are looking at storage units. There's a heavy demand for storage units across New York, across Jersey, across Connecticut. And what we're doing is we're buying these large warehouses, we're going to section them off into smaller spaces, and we're renting them on a monthly basis and automating that. So that people can come and go as they please into their storage units. And because it's not actual people living in there, there's none of the tenants, landlord regulations that we have to follow that can limit rent increases. They can limit, if somebody doesn't pay, how often, how quick you can get them out. So it just helps us from a perspective of being able to control and maintain our cash flow position in those properties. And it's a lot more lucrative in terms of I can take one building, section off 150 spaces, and charge them a good amount for those spaces versus that same lot could perhaps say accommodate 50 apartments. So you can do a lot more in the same amount of space, moving to commercial versus staying in residential.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many opportunities when you start to think commercial property. It opens up your mind to so much more creativity. Like one of the things and I don't know if this is true, but one of the things I mentioned aircraft hangars, right? Because it's been something that's been playing on my mind. I was like, so many people are buying, private jets are becoming way more affordable right now. Like, the brand spanking new top of the line, of course, like anything is going to be super expensive. But then over the last sort of 6 years, you started to notice all these like private jet operators where you can sort of just buy a seat here and there just to go from place to place. You can charter a seat as opposed to chartering a plane. So you can just hop on board if the thing's already going that direction. Or if the guy who owns it or whatever flies to Miami from New York, but then they want to send it back. You can actually jump on board and pay for the seats. It covers their fuel costs or whatever. But there's that model, but then there's so many others where, because people are moving on from their planes, and there's this, and all of those companies that are producing those planes and selling those planes, they're just ramping up. They're selling more and more. They get so many more in production, and of course, people are letting go of them and moving on to newer models and whatnot. So now you've got this like massive sort of dump, or increasingly growing dump of like planes that are sort of just available everywhere almost. And so that's why these like service-based models are coming up, cropping up here and there, which is basically, join us, pay this membership fee, we'll give you X amount of flight hours and you can access private jets, right? So then what happens when you have that many private jets? Well, you've got to put them somewhere. And so now we're talking about all of these airports these smaller airports that are being put together just to cater to that demand, are all going to need like hangar space. And I was like, I can almost see an entirely new like real estate opportunity here on private airline hangars. So, and that's just an example.
No, and there's something that's similar to that that we're starting to see now as well, not with private jets, but with the online retailers, all those people that are selling on Amazon, where they're trying to get, say, a retail presence somewhere, but they cannot afford to get a physical location themselves. So they're subletting almost like PO boxes in stores, where an operator will go rent out a big commercial space somewhere downtown. They'll assign PO boxes within that space, and one small store becomes 100 storefronts for online retailers. And these online retailers can then use that address for whatever they need to, without having to get the cost of actually renting the whole space. And this operator can rent out their own individual section to 100 of these entrepreneurs, and that way increasing their own revenue for that one commercial space to 100 people instead.
So that's like co-retail instead of co-working spaces, right? That's like taking that WeWork model and kind of expanding it into like little like retail spaces, and then that's fantastic. So you see how creative you can get. That's why I love commercial property. It's amazing. So anyway, let's go back. Let's go back to like your specific journey, because one of the things the main reason why I produce these, I work hard at getting as many podcasts as I can have put together, is because I'm trying to reach the person who's like trying to consider getting involved in the thing that they want to get involved with, whether it's a side hustle, whether it's like, oh, I've got to quit my job. My buddy makes money in real estate. How do I do it? And then they go ahead and buy a book. They go online. They watch a guru talking about real estate. Hey, you can fix and flip. You can wholesale. I want to just take it back and go back to like what was your journey into real estate? When did you decide to quit your day job? Did you have a day job? Was it always real estate? How did you get in?
Yeah, so I actually had a pretty good career as a director of procurement for some awesome companies. I used to work for Morgan Stanley, Estee companies, Bloomberg, some pretty big names out there. And it was, I think, two things sort of hit me one day. One was I needed to make money. I finally did a budget for myself one day, and I realized I was spending a lot more than I was bringing in. So I needed to fix that. That was number one. But two, I found it interesting how all these big name companies were started by just individuals that one day said, "Hey, let me give this a shot." And I thought, well, why not? I can figure that out. Let's give it a go. And that's how my investing started. It's one, a need for money. So let me buy some properties to help me get some cash flow in here. But two, can I build something out of it? And that first purchase turned into getting my license, getting additional properties. How do I add accelerate services to this to sustain it and make it so that I can grow the company, but not have to be in it, because I still had my day jobs. I still needed to pay some bills, and I couldn't just let go of that and go full in on this journey, because like I mentioned, I had no reserves at the time. So
you went in with no like investment, no big startup. Like, so you said, okay, I'm gonna have to. You've got this day job and you started this real estate thing on the side. So you got the license. See, a lot of people do that. I mean, that's something that a lot of people. So if anyone was following your trajectory, this is, I guess this is like level one. Keep your lifeline of money coming through, and then pick up your real estate license, because you're going to need that. You got to get the foundation. And by the way, people think like the license is kind of like a driving license. Like, there's actually a lot you learn in the real estate license. I've had quite a few people explain all the nuances and details. Like, it's actually quite a lot that you learn. So you actually come out of that quite a lot smarter and quite a lot more in tune with how the real estate works in that market. Okay, so you get your license. You're still working in your job. A lot of people are at that level. A lot of people are right where you are at this point of your story. What happens next when you go from like quitting your job for that thing than just making the money that you needed to?
Yeah. So at that point, it was a lot of early mornings, late nights, putting in systems in place so that while I was at work, the machine can still function, it can still run. It came to a point where the machine was operating on its own. It was doing sufficient to be a viable solution. And I needed to make the decision of, hey, if I stay here working my corporate job, I'm actually losing money because I can do a whole lot better if I'm focused on this 100%. And so I quit. I called my wife one day during work and said, hey, do you mind if I quit?
Do you mind if I quit?
Do you mind if I quit?
Did she know about the backup plan? Like, or she's like, well, why?
No, there was no backup plan. But she has always been very supportive of me, and without hesitation, she said, "Do it." I expected this at some point, and that's when we went full steam in. 2 weeks later, I left the job. I opened our first office in Westchester, New York. And from there, it gave me the capacity to actually think about what I wanted to do in the business, actually put in more effort and more work into it, which has led for us to be able to actually grow and build a team to support our venture. It used to be just my partner and I just going at it ourselves, trying to do whatever we could in our off time, which was very limited. We were able to hire some virtual assistants while we were building the company, but now we can actually hire agents to support us because we can actually support them on a day-to-day basis. And that was the limiting factor that we had, is that while we were doing it part-time, we could never hire people here in the city to help us grow the business. Now that we were full time and had no choice but to hire people, our business doubled overnight. All because we could focus on it versus dabbling on it as we were.
So you were able to then, now it started making money, right? So now you're I wouldn't say cleaning up, but you've got like consistent pipeline, right? So you've got other agents working for you now, and your head's above water. Okay. And so is that like that? How long was that process? Like, did it take a long time to get to that point? Like, was it
So
like
the
years or
yeah
months or?
no, so the time that it took us to really build the back end when we were working part time, I think we could have done it sooner. But that took us about 3 years of us failing a lot, just making a lot of mistakes, but using those mistakes as learning experiences to find the pain and say, how do we not do that again? Once we quit, it was just turning on the recruiting machine, and that took about a year. From the time that we quit to the time where we can actually have a team to go out and do things for us, that was about a year's time. And from there forward, it's been how do we fine tune that, to just steadily keep on adding fuel into the fire? How do we keep on improving on the mistakes that we're making so that, again, we don't experience those again? And what business partnerships can we establish to help with that growth? So all in all, I think to the point that we are today, it was about a 5-year journey.
Okay. 5-year journey. And you're managing, how many people do you have in the business by this sort of time? Like, is it like a lot,
Yeah.
like plus 10 or lower than 10 or?
No, so it's we run a very I would say lean but efficient team. We have 4 back office VAs that help with all the day-to-day admin work, and we have a team of 12 agents that are just running around meeting clients all the time.
And so you get on them all that. How does that like interaction work with those sales agents? I mean, are they working as like, are they somewhat salaried under yourself, or are they like self-employed? I'm just curious because I
Yeah.
always found that when I had agents, when I was working, so I used to work with like real estate investment agents around the world because I wouldn't use them in the US, but because I could work internationally, we'd structure our properties in that capacity. We could, but in the US, if you're focusing within the US, you need to have, well, you're now going against everyone else, right? So you have some companies that provide like a salary, and then some companies that have like a completely like commission only sort of model. Like,
Yeah.
may I ask, like, what are
Yeah.
yours? What was it like for you? What?
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why, again, we're holding our license under Real Broker, because there's a benefit that they provide to the agents for this. We do not have salary agents at all. It's all purely commission. Apart from our VAs, which we do provide a salary to. Again, they're not agents; they're just pure back office staff. Our agents are 100% commission based, so they make money whenever they make a sale. So they're incentivized to make more sales, to make more money in that sense. But when it comes to Real, they actually have a rev share model that part of the fees that we are paying to Real, they invest back into agents as sort of a pension, if you will, for their future success, future growth. Every sale that they make, and every agent that they attract, either to Real itself as individual agents or to our team, every sale that agent makes, they get a cut percentage of that sale. So if they're making $100,000 a year from a sale of a referral that they brought in, they get, say, up to 5% of every check that person makes. So there is that sort of almost like a salary position, because they just get that automatically, but it's purely based on performance on transactions that they close.
Okay, cool. And how do you expand from there? Like, if someone's kind of followed in your footsteps and they've built the brand, they've got so got some good marketing out there, good funnels. I didn't even ask about your marketing. Like, well, how do you market? Actually, let's ask that question
Yeah,
first. How do you
yeah.
market?
So
Because you're going up, and we mentioned this earlier. The other real estate agents out there are very competitive, especially in the US, where there's a lot of commission on the table. So there's a lot of, I think, how many? Isn't it a staggering number of real estate agents in New York City? Like it's over 100,000 in that little island alone.
So
go ahead.
If I recall correctly, just in Manhattan alone, there was about 55,000 agents.
55,000. Okay, half of what I could be
wrong. Yeah, so I could be wrong, but there's a lot. Manhattan is not that big, so to have that many running around, that's a huge number. And now once you spread that across to the boroughs and to the tri-state area, that number just skyrockets. So there's a lot of competition. But the thing to keep in mind is that a lot of these agents purely they suck. They are either part-time agents.
They got the license, and then after that they lost motivation, right? They got to that level one, and then they just gave up and moved on.
Because what we see is that a lot of people, they see the TV shows, they see the Sirhans, they see HGTV where they're doing all those fancy house flips, and they think, hey, I can do that. That looks easy. Let's go at it. But what they fail to realize is that when you first get your license, nobody knows you, and you have no business in the game at that point. And why should a client go with you versus somebody that's already established? So a staggering fact is that 80% of the business in real estate is done by the top 10%. The rest is spread across the remaining 50,000 people. So they each will do perhaps one transaction a year if they're lucky. Most will do none at all. So if you look at from that perspective, your actual competition is very small, but they're very good at what they're doing. And because of that, marketing needs to be very direct and targeted to your audience to make sure that it's effective. In the beginning, we tried out traditional, Facebook ads, Google ads, mailers. We tried it all. And what we found was that we weren't very, very good at it at all. Our flyers would go out, they would be returned. We had one lady actually walk into our office one day and say, hey, please don't mail me. I don't want to see this.
Came to the office. So the address was there. She walked to the office and said, stop giving me these. Stop sending me these. Oh my God. That's a first. I've never heard that.
Yeah. Before. Yeah. But she was lovely, but I wasn't expecting that.
What were you guys thinking? Like, were our phones not working when you called? Like, what was going on? Like, is there another problem? Like, why did you walk over here?
She wanted to make sure that we got her message, so she walked all the way.
She definitely went out of her way.
Yeah, but the point was that people were getting these mailers; they were seeing our ads, and the phone was ringing. So we do continue to do a bit of this to this day, but the quality of the leads that we were getting were just not there. I think we were just breaking even for the most part, which was great for just brand awareness, getting our face out there. So that's why we continue to this day. But the good leads, we found that they were the ones that we were getting through referrals, through past clients, through our network, people that already knew us that would say, hey, call these guys, they'll take care of you. And so we shifted from the traditional online and sort of physical marketing methods to more event-based marketing. So what we'll do today is that, every so often, at least once a month, every couple of weeks, we'll throw a party. We'll do a client appreciation day where we'll invite all our clients. We'll have, food, drinks, giveaways, and we'll just have a good time, invite them all, and we'll say, hey, bring your friends, come hang out with us. We'll pick a random Tuesday night and have a taco truck come over, and hey, free tacos for everybody. Come on over, bring your friends. So between a mix of doing those sort of party events to also doing just seminars where we're inviting people to come over, or we're hosting somewhere where they can learn about real estate, or just learn about anything that's sort of in their minds. We'll have in-person activities where the people that are coming to these events, that are showing up to these seminars, they're very motivated. They've already raised their hand saying, hey, I'm interested. I'm here, so I am all in on this. Those are the ones that convert. Those are the ones that cost us the least amount of money. And those are ones that will continue to refer as business down the line. So from every event, our goal is to get at least one person to say, hey, I'm ready. And that one person turns into 2 or 3 different leads down the line.
Oh, that's brilliant. Talk about like, I guess like like an organic referral system. Like, I mean, it's not organic. It's you're creating these opportunities and spending money on them. But it is definitely, you're not having to cut anyone else in as such,
No.
apart from your typical, your own line of like your real estate agents.
Yeah.
But
And
and
on the
also,
money part, and on the money part, that's the best part of it. Most of this is free. You don't have to spend much money on it because you can partner with, ancillary services that will also benefit from this to sponsor you. We recently threw a ping pong social down in K-Town in Manhattan, where we rented out a place called Face Ping Pong. We had food and drinks. We had a guest speaker that came into the event to just talk about real estate. And this event was sponsored by our insurance broker, was sponsored by our mortgage lenders, it was sponsored by our inspectors, because these are people that will take part in the transaction either way at some point. So as a buyer, if you come to me to buy a home, most
so
will ask me.
how do you set up that sponsorship? Like, you just call your insurance provider and say, hey, look, I'm throwing a party
Yeah,
down here. Like, would you guys pay for it? Is that how it works?
pretty much. We go ahead and get everything set up. We figure out how much it's going to cost us, and then we then determine how much money we need to raise, and we'll just cut that up into chunks of different level sponsorships. Between, say, call it a bronze sponsorship to like a platinum sponsorship, where you can invest between 500 to $3,000 for the event. And depending on your investment, we just talk about you, and we give you opportunities to meet people in that event and just promote you alongside of our own brand.
Oh, right. So it's kind of like the old, also, it's like you're almost following the old event model. Like, if you pay
Yeah,
top dollar, we'll give you a round table and you can have a one-to-one with
yeah,
somebody. It's like,
yeah,
is that, it's almost to
yeah.
that level.
Yeah. But the thing is, we limit it because we don't want to make it salesy at all. So at no point in our events are we actually ourselves selling anything to you, or do we let our sponsors sell anything to them. We want it to be all about the client, all about our audience at that point, answering their questions, catering to their needs. Because we know the more we do that, and the more we love on them, they will just want to, talk to us about our business. It's whenever we speak with somebody about real estate, that is the last thing I'll speak to them about. I'll talk to them about their kids, about them, about what's going on in their lives, and they'll naturally want to ask about me and what I'm doing. So we treat our events in the same way. We lead with value, and then they naturally want to help us because they want to thank us for our service at that point. So in our events, we won't put out anything that's big and flashy about sponsors, but we will highlight them, and we'll introduce them as, hey, this is John. He works at Chase Bank, and John, here's Jim, and just making those connections. And again, not being salesy, having some sort of rules that we follow, we've seen that it's proven to be very successful.
How do you scale that up? How do you make that? If it's successful now, like, how do you just turn that into a machine? Like, does it mean you go, like, you create bigger events? Do you become,
Yeah.
is it just the event size that you go ahead and focus on, or?
So what our model has grown from seminars like every month to now we'll do pop-up events. Say we'll again have like a taco truck on Tuesday, just come to the office. We'll have an ice cream social just pop up, and we'll start to then use those pop-up events that cost again very little to no money at all to build our mailing list. Collect information on people that show up to these events, and as we build that mailing list, those are the people, along with our past clients, that we invite to the big events, every quarter. So we'll have smaller events leading to a big massive event once a quarter, and a bigger event at the end of the year. So right now we're planning our end of the year plan appreciation events, end of November, early December, and that's going to benefit from every other interaction we've had since January. So every name we've collected since then will get invited to this. And whereas a small event can be as small as 5 people, this big event will likely be, say, a few hundred.
Okay. Would you ever consider going out offshore? Would you go offshore?
Oh, for sure.
You're looking for buyers here,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
would you ever consider, I mean, that's what I'm trying to look at, like almost like where I went wrong. What did I miss when I was doing real estate? Like I used to obviously, for anyone that knows me, I used to build distribution channels. I used to work with real estate houses around the world. So these are like boutique agencies that would have their own book of clients, and that those investors would tend to have an appetite for investing outside of the company they would reside in.
Yeah.
And so America was always a good spot to land bank for people to safeguard their money in a safe store of value, which as
Yeah.
far as real estate is concerned in the US is normally a safe bet. So I mean, you're there in New York. Would you ever consider going down that road of just partnering up with entities around the world and,
Yeah.
essentially building up your own distribution network
Yeah.
of, investors around the world to come and buy into these businesses, into these opportunities, I should say?
Yeah, and that's definitely something that is an innovation for the future. We started out, I think our first event was 0 people. Nobody showed up to the first one. And that led to 2 or 3, coming to the next one. So we've slowly scaled them up to where they are at today. And the plan is to, first go outside of, New York, go into other states, and then go into other locations just worldwide. Because it's in these events that we find those investors that either don't have time or don't have the expertise or just want somebody to do things for them. So we showcase what we're doing, we lead with value, and from these events, we always get 1 or 2 people that say, "Hey, I'm ready now. I've been watching you. I've been coming to these for a while now. Here's my money. Let's work together."
Mm. Okay, it's fantastic. It's brilliant, man. So, do you think that this is something that most people could like follow? Could they follow the same strategy
Definitely.
as you, or do you think this is like a skill set that you just can't give away like that? So it has to be.
No, no, definitely. I think everybody has a superpower. Everybody is able to, gather friends together, and that's what it originally was. It was just a gathering of friends that knew I was in real estate, who I invited to have a drink, and I said, "Hey, bring your other friends over to this." So anybody can start out in this path. And like I said, the first event, nobody showed up, but we kept trying. And down the line, there were other events where they weren't successful, but we kept trying. And as long as you're persistent enough and you do it constantly enough where people are watching and they're always watching, you'll be able to create your own community. And that's what we wanted to build. We wanted to build a community centered around us, centered around what we were doing, to block out the noise from everybody else that's out there. As we said, there are so many agents out there that are, doing phenomenal things. And frankly, we're not at the level we can compete with somebody that has their own TV show on Netflix, or at least not yet. So we have to, center people's eyes and attention into our story. And there's no better way to do that than to include them in that journey by having them, be part of whatever it is that we're doing. In these events or anything else that brings them face to face with us.
Okay, and so when you're talking about that, you're talking about the real estate agents, potential real estate agents, or you're just talking about investors here, buyers?
Oh, both.
Both.
So we
Okay.
do this, yeah. So not only do we use the events as a recruiting mechanism to attract other agents that are like-minded, we use this to recruit buyers and show them that, hey, we're doing this. We're investing in this new project. This is what we've done in the past. What do you guys think?
Okay. Yeah. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So I think really what you're saying is, if you've gotten to the point where, and there's a lot of people out there who want to kind of go and take the steps in that direction of becoming a professional in real estate, because of course, whenever we have these conversations, even if you kind of look back to the conversation we've just had, it's all been about lots of money. At no point was it like, oh, doom and gloom. When it comes to real estate, provided you can get in and provided you can start transacting, you're making money. And that's why, that brings with it that allure. Like everyone wants to get involved, and they think because, okay, you don't have to have or every qualification under the sun to become a real estate agent or to make money in real estate, but it still takes grind. It still takes effort. So like, I think if anyone's like listening that wants to follow this kind of thing, you've got to follow Aneury's shoes. Sorry, you got to follow his plan here, which is to get not only just get started, but start executing, start putting in the work. Like going back to that first thing that you said about, you were working at the time, and before you decided to like kill off that lifeline, you had to get those deals coming through first before it gave you the confidence, right? And I think that's one of the things that's a big sticking point with anybody who goes into real estate, because they're always, I mean, how many times have you stepped into an Uber and you talk to the guy and the guy's like, yeah, I'm also a real estate agent. Like I'm all, like, you've got to get past that point and get in. I mean, going to these events, networking up is the fastest way to do it. People think almost like they don't do it as much because it's kind of hard to quantify immediately, because it's not like an ad campaign that has a certain amount of leads coming back and you get this point. When you go to a networking event or events of any kind, it's, it could be it could tank completely and you might not meet anyone, but then you could meet that one person that changes everything for you.
Exactly. And that's so much better than that. I used to hate events, and frankly, I still, in a way, almost still do. I'm a very private person when it comes to just socializing and going out. And for the longest time, I never went to any networking events. I never attended any mastermind. I was trying to figure things out on my own with my partner, which, looking back, that's what really made this such a slow journey in the beginning, because we were out there by ourselves trying to figure things out on our own. It wasn't until we started to go out and meet other agents, other business owners, not in real estate, but just in business in general, that we started to develop and learn things. How are you running your business? How are you doing this? What are your challenges? And really learning from their mistakes. That's when things really turned. In the beginning, we thought we knew it all, and we were far from it. But there were a few books, a few podcasts, or an unhealthy amount of podcasts at some point that I listened to.
Well, you like binge listen to like real estate gurus talking about how to make money in real estate.
Exactly. And then a few key connections that once those came into sort of our sphere, that we started listening to them, that's when things changed. That's when the systems came into practice and started to build systems. That's when we started to really, work on attracting versus recruiting talents and clients. And that's where our messaging all around changed. Just going out there and meeting people, and then creating that sense of community around us to do the same for others.
Okay. Man, it's a journey when it comes to real estate. There's so many, like most people's story, it's never ever just like a clear cut and dry.
Yeah.
We just kind of started a job and then we started making money. I mean, there are people like that, but it's such a competitive world, man. All right, well, thank you so much I know we're at time. I try and keep these podcasts like an hour. So let's have you on again, like, because you're constantly growing, man. Like the real estate world, I'd love to like speak to you in like 6 months from now and just find out where you're at, because real estate, you can be pulling in $1 million one year, and then literally halfway through the next, you could be on 10 million. It can go that quickly, especially when you start getting those $1 million listings and stuff like that. So I'd love to check in with you 6 months from now, see where you're at. I know you were doing we didn't really speak too much on it, but I know you had some charitable things that you were doing in the area, like the in the Heights. I recall you mentioning in our earlier discussion, into sort of helping the local community get involved with the real estate. In fact, before we close off, why don't we talk on that a little bit, because I think that's amazing, to help, like, I guess, people from those communities, people of color, people who wouldn't typically normally gravitate to the world of real estate as early as they could. This is an opportunity for them to get in. Why don't we talk on that for a second?
Yeah. So, I grew up in the Heights, and I don't come by any means from a wealthy family. So it was at one point me, my brothers, and my parents in just a one-bedroom shoebox in the city growing up. And a lot of my friends were just like that, again, in the early ages or early days. So one thing that we've been trying to do more of, in partnership with some of our lenders, like our mortgage brokers, inspectors, lawyers with similar backgrounds, we have been hosting educational seminars in the Heights and in the nearby neighborhoods, just to teach others in similar situations that they can, elevate their lives from what it is today. And real estate is a vehicle that anybody can get into for that purpose. So we're doing a lot of seminars. We're actively recruiting in the Latino communities and in these other neighborhoods to bring them not just onto our team, but just into the business in general, whether it's our team or as individuals. And we're showing them what we're doing. We're being very open with, this is how we set up our business. This is how we structure our back. And this is how we pursue clients. And we're bringing them along in our journey. So we're giving them opportunities to join us in our ventures going forward. Again, just to help others and give back so that, anybody can have access to this. It's not, doesn't take...
reduce the barriers, right? Reduce the barriers for getting
exactly.
it. Yeah. And get the ride along too, so you really know the ins and outs.
Yeah. Yeah.
To see it from, get past the book cover. Get in there.
Exactly.
Makes a world of difference. And the sooner the better. Like I say, like earlier is better when it comes to real estate, because it's one thing that'll be there for a long time. Provided us as humans are here, we're going to need a place to put our heads and to conduct business. So
that is true.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you again so much for being here. Really appreciate your time. Like I say, would love to have you back on in 6 months or so, and we'll just touch base then, see where you're at. Talk about the journey a little bit more. But yeah, appreciate it, man. And for everyone that's out there who's listening, like and subscribe for more.
Awesome. Great chatting with you.